Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, lots and lots of short books. It's my weekly wrap-up. So I've complained in the last couple of these weekly videos that I felt that I'd made a poor start to my Read What You Own challenge. So that's a challenge where I'm reading 100 books I already own before buying any new ones. And as of this video last week, I'd only read 4 books. And that was partly because I'd read a couple of very, very long books. So at that point last week, I was reading Drood by Dan Simmons, which is nearly 800 pages long. And I had also been reading, and had finished that week, Death Note, which is 2,400 pages long. So I'm pleased to say that this week I've broken that curse, and I've actually got 8 books to talk about today, which I've finished this week, which puts me up to 12 books on my Read What You Own challenge. So definitely making better progress. So normal format for this today, I'll talk briefly about each of the books that I have read. And talk about what I'm likely to be reading next, and then also talk about some channel stuff. So talk about what's been on the channel, what's coming up on the channel, and I've also got a mini book haul for you, which is completely compliant with the Read What You Own challenge. So I'll do that at the end. Right, so in terms of what I finished this week then. So as already advertised, I finished Drood by Dan Simmons. This was very kindly sent to me by a subscriber, Rick Croucher, so thanks again for this, Rick. I absolutely loved this book. This was fantastic. It was such a good book. I won't talk too much about it because I am going to do a full review, which will probably go up in the week ahead. But a really, really interesting book, and it's really stuck with me since I finished it. There's so many different themes and ideas and just so much stuff going on in this book. It was absolutely brilliant. And at its core, just a really interesting examination of a friendship between two people. So Wilkie Collins, the author, and Charles Dickens, the author. So yeah, an excellent book. Really, really enjoyed that. So having finished that, I've gone through a slew of much shorter books. So first up, Edge, Book 17, Vengeance Valley by George G. Gilman. So another in my ongoing saga to read the Edge books. I think there's about 50 of them in all, and I've got a number of them. I certainly haven't got all of them, but I've got a decent number of them. So it was fine. It wasn't a standout entry in the series, but I did quite enjoy it. So Edge is this kind of brutal cowboy in the Old West who goes around getting into gunfights with people, basically. This one, he's up against a ruthless land baron. But yeah, it was an entertaining read. After that, I read, and this was a reread, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. So that was for my Birth Year Book Tag reading group, where we're reading books that were recommended by people as their favourite books from the year of their birth. So I've read this a couple of times before. I really enjoyed rereading it. It's just such a fun, creative, amusing, charming book. It's just really, really sweet. But very, very funny as well. Probably familiar to many of you out there. But if you haven't read it, I do recommend it. It's just a nice antidote to all the crap that's going on in the world at the moment. So a very, very entertaining book about an Earthman who gets taken up into space by someone who he thinks is a friend of his, who turns out to be a visiting alien from another planet. And this alien saves him just as the Earth is about to get destroyed to make way for a new hyperspace bypass. And they then kind of meet all sorts of interesting characters and kind of travel through space. But just very, very funny indeed. I really, really enjoyed it. After that, another of the series I am reading through. So this was book 9 in the Survivalist series by Jerry Ahern, which is called Earthfire. I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as some of the recent entries in the series. So the thing Jerry Ahern does really well in these books is flip between like 2 or 3 sets of characters. So you've constantly got something interesting going on, but he's switching focus. Whereas in this one, it's all focused on just 2 characters basically. So John Rourke, the hero, and Natalia, who's his Russian KGB lover, who are trying to take down the invading Russians who've invaded America. So it just didn't entertain me quite as much as some of the others, but it is absolutely packed with action, and the end takes the book in a very different direction. So really interested to see what happens in the next book in the series. Next up, yet another series I'm reading through. So this is book 16 in the Executioner saga, Sicilian Slaughter, which is written by an author called William Crawford. So it's the first of the books in this series that wasn't written by the original creator, Don Pendleton. It says on the cover Jim Peterson, but that apparently was a house name. I think Pendleton came back after this one and wrote the next kind of dozen or so, and then after that it's a whole different mix of people. But yeah, this one apparently written by a guy called William Crawford. This was fun. I mean, it didn't feel massively different at all from the Don Pendleton books in the series, so it continues the tale of Mac Bolan waging a one-man war against the mafia. In this one, as you can probably guess from the title, he goes to Sicily and takes them out there. What there was in this one, actually, there isn't so much of in the Pendleton books, is just some really fun prose, some really kind of over-the-top, slightly hard-boiled prose, which I enjoyed a lot. So yeah, a fun entry, lots of action. Yeah, a good fun read, which I read on a train journey home from London after being in London one day this week. Next up, something I didn't enjoy nearly as much was Elevation by Stephen King. Now, this is a book that I have such mixed feelings about that even though it's really short, I think I'm going to have to do a review of this one. Because I don't know, I'm still processing it. I only finished it yesterday, and it has left me somewhat troubled in that I can't quite figure out what I think of it. But basically, it mashes together two very different storylines, not terribly well, and has a central message to it, which felt a bit dubious at best. So yeah, I think I will do a full review of this one in the coming weeks. I need to figure out when I can slot it into the schedule. But yeah, an interesting read. Certainly not King's best, but there are some bits in this book which are very, very good. There were a few scenes and a few bits where he kind of weaves together different parts of the story in a way that was, I thought, really successful. So there was a lot that was interesting about this book, but overall, I definitely wasn't a huge fan of it. Next up, a book I've been meaning to read for ages, Baxter by Jessica Hamilton, which is also known as Hellhound by Ken Greenhall. So Jessica Hamilton was a pseudonym, and the book has recently been republished by Valancourt Books with its... I think Hellhound is what it was called in the States, whereas in the UK it was called Baxter. I might be wrong, but certainly now it's available as Hellhound. This was great. This was really, really interesting. It definitely lived up to my expectations. And again, I will do a full review of it, but basically it's about Baxter, who is a bull terrier and also basically a psychopath, and it's about his interactions with various humans he meets. So it's partly told in third person from the perspective of the humans and partly told in first person from Baxter's perspective. And Baxter is an absolutely fascinating character. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. Definitely recommend it. As I say, I will do a review of it soon. And then finally, a book I read this morning, Street Siren by Tom Batt. So Tom, the author, very kindly sent me a copy of this for review, and I will do a full review of it on the channel at some point soon. But I really, really enjoyed this. It's not perfect by any means. It does feel at times like a self-published book, which it is, but there was a lot to enjoy here. So it's set in the 1980s. It's about a young woman called Devlin, who's a prostitute, whose lover, who's also a prostitute, gets murdered, and it's about her taking revenge. So it's got a fantastic kind of the vibe of sleazy 80s London, but also it feels like a lot of those kind of revenge movies which you used to find in video shops back in the 80s. So yeah, it was a really, really fun read. I enjoyed it a lot, and as I say, I'll share some more thoughts on it soon. So in terms of what I'm going to read next, I'm actually not sure. I've literally just finished Street Siren. I have got other things that were on my TBR for this month, but I'm kind of not really feeling them. So I've got The High Window by Raymond Chandler and The Real Cool Killers by Chester Himes, are two things that I haven't got to yet, and also the Luminatus trilogy. But I'm kind of really in the mood for another short book. I've really enjoyed just ploughing through a bunch of short things, short kind of slightly trashy things indeed. indeed this week. So I think I'm going to pluck some books from the bottom shelf on my TBR cart, which has got a range of kind of pulpy delights on it. So yeah, I'm going to pluck something from there, I think, and maybe try another disturbing book for my Disturbing Books project as well. So in terms of channel stuff then, videos you've had over the last week, which you may have missed. So I did a review of Death Note, the 2,400 page single volume manga that I read, which I enjoyed a lot. I did a top 10, my top 10 favourite banned books. I did a video about movies that you probably didn't know were based on books, which people seem to have quite enjoyed. I did the evolution of a reader tag. I did a review of The Fog by James Herbert. And I did a review of the movie Terrifier 2, as well as sharing some thoughts on the difference between kind of extreme horror cinema and extreme horror fiction. In the week ahead, as I said, I'm probably going to do a review of Drood by Dan Simmons. I think I'm going to do on Tuesday the There Are 10 But tag, which is quite a fun book tag. I will do a review of Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Basterica as part of my Disturbing Books project. And I've got something which I'm hoping to do on Friday, which is a bit different and a bit special. I'm quite excited about it anyway. You may not be when you see what it is, but I think tomorrow's Sunday video will give you a clue as to what it's likely to be. So yeah, tune in on Sunday, and you'll get a clue to what Friday's video is going to be, if that interests you at all. So yes, that's what's coming up on the channel in the week ahead, and that's what you may have missed over the last week or so. So now, as promised, a very small book haul for you. I've got 3 books to talk about, all of which were gained in completely Read What You Own challenge compliant ways. So you may remember for my personal challenge, I've said I will still receive books as gifts, and I will still receive books from authors or publishers or publicists for review. So all 3 of those books meet one of those criteria. So the first one is a book that was very kindly sent to me by a subscriber, Kevin Judge. So this is Button and Other Stories, Button Uncanny Stories by Richard Matheson. So I'm a really big fan of Richard Matheson, despite not having enjoyed his book Hell House, which I read recently very much. Everything else I've read by him I've loved, and I've not read any of his short stories, so I'm really keen to read this. I also have also a gift from somebody, another collection of his short stories as well, so I may do both of them back to back. So yeah, thank you again, Kevin. Very kind of you to have sent me that. And then 2 things I've received for review. So this novella, Salamander Justice, by Tamika Thompson, which sounds like a kind of interesting dark fantasy kind of YA type novella. So sent to me by the publicist, so very much looking forward to giving this a try. I do think the cover is pretty fantastic. And also from Flame Tube Press, Dragonfly Summer by J.H. Moncrief, which sounds like an interesting kind of mix of mystery and maybe a little bit of horror as well. So I do think that's a rather nice cover as well. So yeah, looking forward to this one too. Okay, time for a random book from the shelves then. Today's book is Cop Hater by Ed McBain, the first of the 87th Precinct series of books. My favourite series of books of all time. This is a fantastic start to the series. It's a fantastic series. If you like mystery novels, you'll be doing yourself a favour by picking up one of the 87th Precinct books. They are absolutely brilliant. So I hope you found that interesting. Do let me know what you've been reading this week. Let me know if you've read any of the books I talked about. And if you're doing the Read What You Own challenge, let me know how you are getting along with that. As I say, I feel like I've picked up speed a bit this week, so that's good. But yeah, as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're really good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.